For most people on Earth, the night was completely normal. Cars moved through busy streets. Families watched television before going to sleep. Workers finished their late shifts. Nobody knew that far above the planet, hidden in the darkness of space, something impossible was watching. A giant alien ship floated silently beyond Earth satellites. Its black metal surface reflected no light inside the ship. Hundreds of strange beings stood before glowing screens. They were members of the Zorath Empire, one of the most feared powers in the galaxy, for months. They had been searching for a special target. Their spies had detected unusual signals coming from Earth. According to their information, a dangerous human warrior was hiding somewhere on the planet. The Zorath leaders believed this human could become a threat in the future. They wanted to capture him before that happened, deep inside the ship. Commander Varek watched a large hologram of Earth. His glowing yellow eyes narrowed as new information appeared on the screen. "The target has been located," one officer reported. Varek nodded slowly. "Send the capture team immediately," he ordered. Thousands of miles below, Sergeant Jack Carter was finishing another long day at a military base in the Nevada desert. The base was quiet. Most soldiers were already asleep. Jack sat alone outside the barracks, drinking coffee and looking at the stars. At 30 years old, he looked like an ordinary soldier. He was strong, disciplined, and respected by his fellow troops. But there was nothing special about him, at least that was what everyone believed. A cool desert wind moved across the empty ground. Jack checked his watch and prepared to go inside. Then something strange happened, one by one. The lights around the base began to flicker. Jack frowned. A second later, every light suddenly went dark. The entire base lost power. The desert became silent, very silent. Jack immediately stood up. Years of military training told him something was wrong. Across the base, confused soldiers came running from their buildings. Officers shouted orders. Emergency generators failed to activate. Communication systems stopped working. Even military vehicles refused to start. "What is happening?" One soldier asked nervously. Nobody had an answer. Then a bright blue light appeared in the sky. Everyone looked up. The light grew larger and larger. Some soldiers thought it was a helicopter. Others believed it was an experimental aircraft. But as the object descended, they realized it was neither. A massive circular craft emerged from the darkness. Gasps spread across the base. The ship was enormous. Its smooth black surface looked unlike anything built by humans. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody even spoke. Fear filled the air. Then alarms suddenly sounded across the base. Soldiers rushed to defensive positions. Weapons were raised toward the sky, but before anyone could fire, beams of blue energy shot down from the alien craft. The beams struck communication towers, vehicles, and security systems. Every machine instantly shut down. Panic spread through the base. Jack grabbed his rifle and moved toward a group of younger soldiers. "Stay together," he told them. His calm voice helped them focus. The giant ship slowly hovered above the base. Then smaller objects detached from its underside, dropships, dozens of them. They landed across the facility. Metal doors opened. Strange figures stepped out. The aliens were tall and thin. Their gray armor covered their entire bodies. Glowing blue eyes stared at the frightened humans. The soldiers opened fire. Bullets filled the night. But invisible shields protected the aliens. Not a single shot reached them. The aliens moved forward without fear. Energy weapons flashed. Soldiers were knocked unconscious one after another. Jack quickly led several troops toward cover. His mind raced as he searched for a way to fight back, but every option seemed impossible. The aliens were too advanced, too powerful. Suddenly, a bright beam appeared behind him. Jack turned. 3 aliens stood only a few feet away. Their weapons pointed directly at him. For a second, nobody moved. Then one of the aliens activated a scanning device. A blue light passed over Jack's body. The device beeped loudly. The alien looked surprised. "It is him," the creature said. Another alien nodded. "The target has been confirmed." Jack stared at them in confusion. "Target? What target?" They must have made a mistake. He was just a soldier, nothing more, before he could react. A pulse of energy struck him in the chest. Pain exploded through his body. His rifle fell from his hands. The world around him began to spin as he collapsed to the ground. He heard distant gunfire and shouting. Everything became blurry. The last thing he saw was the giant alien ship hanging above the base. Then darkness covered his vision. Minutes later, the battle was over. The aliens returned to their ships without warning. The fleet disappeared into the night sky. By sunrise, the military base looked like a battlefield. Vehicles were disabled, buildings were damaged, and one soldier was missing. Far beyond Earth, Jack slowly opened his eyes. Cold metal surrounded him. Strange symbols glowed on nearby walls. The air smelled unfamiliar. His head throbbed with pain. He tried to stand but quickly realized he was locked inside a small cell. Outside the transparent barrier, strange alien creatures walked through a brightly lit corridor. Jack's heart began to pound. This was not a dream. This was not a secret military experiment. He had been taken, kidnapped by aliens, and somewhere inside the massive ship, unknown beings believed they had captured someone important. The problem was simple. They had kidnapped the wrong soldier. Jack Carter slowly stood inside this small metal cell. His head still hurt from the energy blast for several seconds. He simply stared through the transparent barrier. Everything around him felt impossible. The walls glowed with soft blue light. Strange symbols moved across screens built into the metal. Alien voices echoed through the corridor outside. This was real. He was no longer on Earth. He was somewhere deep in space. Jack forced himself to stay calm. Panic would not help him survive. Military training had taught him one important lesson. A soldier must think before acting. He walked around the cell and carefully studied everything. There were no visible doors, no control panels, no obvious way to escape. The aliens had built this prison well. A few minutes later, heavy footsteps approached. 3 armored aliens stopped outside his cell. Their glowing eyes examined him carefully. One of them activated a small device. A holographic screen appeared between them. The alien studied the information and frowned. "Human appears smaller than expected," it said. Another alien nodded. "Maybe humans are more dangerous than they look." Jack remained silent. The aliens continued talking as if he could not understand them, unknown to them. The translation implant hidden inside the cell was converting their language into English. Finally, the aliens left. Jack learned something important. They still believed he was their target, whatever mistake they had made. They had not discovered it yet. Hours passed. Or at least Jack thought they were hours. There was no way to tell time inside the ship. Then something unexpected happened. A section of the wall became transparent. Jack suddenly saw dozens of prison cells. His eyes widened. The prison was huge. Creatures from many different worlds were locked inside. Some had blue skin. Some had 4 arms. Some were covered with scales. Others looked nothing like any living thing on Earth. Many prisoners noticed Jack. They stared at him with curiosity. A few looked frightened. One large alien slowly approached the barrier between their cells. His skin looked like dark stone. His golden eyes focused on Jack. "So the rumors are true," the creature said. Jack blinked. "What rumors?" The giant alien looked surprised. "You do not know?" Jack shook his head. The creature laughed softly. "The famous human warrior does not know his own reputation." Jack almost smiled. "They definitely kidnapped the wrong person." The alien's expression changed. "You are not the warrior?" "No," Jack replied. "I am just a soldier." The alien stared at him for several seconds. Then he laughed even harder. That is exactly what a dangerous warrior would say. Several nearby prisoners nodded in agreement. Jack sighed. Nobody believed him. The giant alien introduced himself as Crocs. He came from a world destroyed by the Zorth Empire. Many prisoners shared similar stories. Some had been rebels. Others had been scientists. A few had simply spoken against the Empire. The Zorth rulers feared anyone who might challenge their power. That was why this prison existed. As the conversations continued, Jack learned more about the galaxy. The Zorth Empire controlled thousands of star systems. Entire civilizations feared them. Most species surrendered without resistance. The Empire rarely made mistakes, which made Jack's situation even stranger. Why would such a powerful civilization kidnap an ordinary human soldier? The question stayed in his mind. Suddenly, red lights flashed throughout the prison. A loud alarm filled the air. Every prisoner jumped to their feet. What is happening? Jack asked. Crocs's eyes widened. That alarm should not be active. The flashing lights grew brighter. Alien guards began running through the corridors. Their movements looked nervous, very nervous. Something was wrong, very wrong. Then every screen inside the prison suddenly went black. The alarm stopped for 1 second. Complete silence filled the massive chamber. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. A strange feeling spread through the prison, as if something dangerous had just entered the ship. Without warning, the lights turned back on. But now a new message appeared on every screen. The words were written in dozens of alien languages. Even the explosion echoed through the prison like thunder. The entire ship shook violently. Metal walls rattled. Warning lights flashed red across every corridor. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Hundreds of prisoners rushed out of their cells. Some shouted with excitement, others ran in fear. Alien guards appeared from every direction. Energy weapons fired bright blue beams through the crowded prison. Several prisoners fell. Others fought back using anything they could find. Jack immediately dropped behind a metal support column. His military instincts took control. He carefully studied the situation. The prisoners had numbers. The guards had weapons and training. If everyone attacked blindly, most of them would die. Crocs rushed toward him. The giant alien looked ready for battle. What do we do now? Crocs asked. Jack looked around quickly. A nearby guard was giving orders to his troops. The soldiers were trying to protect an important security door. That meant something valuable was behind it. Jack pointed toward the area. "We take that door," he said. Crocs frowned. "Why?" "Because they are protecting it," Jack replied. Crocs smiled. For the first time, he understood why humans survived so many wars. Jack was already thinking several steps ahead. The two moved through the chaos. Several prisoners followed them. The group stayed low while energy blasts flew overhead. A frightened alien prisoner suddenly froze in the middle of the corridor. A beam nearly hit him without hesitation. Jack grabbed him and pulled him to safety. The prisoner stared at him in shock. "You saved me," Jack nodded. "Keep moving." Soon their group reached the security door. 4 Zoreth guards blocked the entrance. Their armor was stronger than anything the prisoners had. The guards opened fire. Prisoners scattered for cover. Crocs slammed his massive body into one guard. The impact sent the alien crashing into a wall. At the same time, Jack noticed something important. The guard's armor had a glowing power unit on the back. A weakness, he quickly picked up a metal pipe from the floor. While the guards focused on Crocs, Jack moved behind them. One powerful strike smashed into a power unit. Sparks exploded everywhere. The guard collapsed instantly. The remaining guards turned toward Jack. That was their mistake. The prisoners rushed forward. Seconds later, the entrance belonged to them. The security door slowly opened. Beyond it was a large control center. Dozens of holographic screens filled the room. Most of the crew had already abandoned their stations. Jack stepped inside and examined the displays. even though he could not understand most of the alien technology. One screen caught his attention. A giant star map filled the wall. Thousands of stars glowed across the display. One blue dot flashed brightly Earth. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He moved closer. The screen translated automatically. What he read made his blood run cold. A Zorath battle fleet was moving toward Earth. Not one ship, not 10 ships. An entire invasion fleet, hundreds of warships. The attack was already planned. Earth was the target. Crocs walked beside him. "What is it?" he asked. Jack pointed at the display. "My home world." The giant alien studied the information. His face became serious. "The Zorath do not send fleets unless they plan complete conquest." Jack clenched his fists. Millions of people on Earth had no idea what was coming. Families were sleeping peacefully. Children were going to school. Normal life continued. And somewhere in deep space, an alien fleet was preparing to destroy everything. Suddenly, another warning appeared on the screen. "Prison breach detected." Commander Alerted. Crocs looked worried. "That is bad. Who is the commander?" Jack asked. The giant alien hesitated. Then he answered. "Commander Varek." Even saying the name seemed uncomfortable. "He has conquered dozens of worlds. He never forgives failure." As if on cue. A deep voice echoed throughout the ship. Every speaker activated at once. Prisoners froze. Guards stopped moving. The voice was calm, cold, dangerous. "Attention, prisoners. I am Commander Varek. You have escaped your cells. You have caused damage to Imperial property. But your freedom ends now." A giant hologram suddenly appeared above the control center. The image showed a tall alien wearing black armor. His yellow eyes glowed like fire. Jack immediately recognized him. This was the alien leader, the one responsible for his capture. Varek's eyes scanned the room. Then something unexpected happened. His gaze stopped directly on Jack. The commander's expression changed. For a brief second, he looked surprised, then interested. "So," Varek said softly, "the human survives." Every prisoner turned toward Jack. The commander was speaking directly to him. Varek stepped closer to the holographic camera. "I expected more resistance from you." Jack stared back. "You kidnapped the wrong soldier." The commander smiled, a dangerous smile. "No. Human, our information is never wrong. You simply do not know who you are yet." Those words sent a chill through the room. Even Jack felt uneasy. What did Varek mean? Before he could ask, the ship suddenly shook again. A much larger explosion rocked the vessel. Several screens shattered. Emergency lights flickered. The commander's image vanished. Then a terrified voice came over the communication system. "Commander, unknown vessel detected. Unknown vessel approaching at extreme speed." The message repeated across the ship. Crew members began shouting. Panic spread through the corridors. Even Crocs looked confused. Who would attack a Zorath prison ship? He asked. Nobody had an answer. Jack looked toward the star map. A single red signal was racing toward them. It was moving faster than anything he had ever seen, whatever it was. It was powerful enough to make the mighty Zorath Empire afraid, and it was heading straight for them. Asterisk, asterisk. The entire prison ship trembled as the unknown vessel rushed closer. Red warning lights flashed across every corridor. Crew members ran in panic. Prisoners stared at the screens in confusion. Nobody knew what was happening. The mighty Zorath Empire was feared across the galaxy. Very few civilizations were brave enough to challenge them. Yet something was coming, something powerful. Jack stood in front of the star map. The red signal moved faster every second. Even the ship's computers struggled to track it. Crocs folded his massive arms. "I have never seen the Zorath afraid before," he said. Jack nodded. Neither had he. Suddenly a loud voice echoed through the control center. "Emergency battle stations activated. All security forces report immediately, outside the room." Dozens of Zoroth soldiers rushed through the corridors. The prison break was no longer their biggest problem. The unknown ship had become the new threat. Jack noticed something interesting. Most of the guards had abandoned their positions. Security across the prison vessel was weakening. An opportunity was appearing. One of the prisoners pointed toward a nearby terminal. The screen had become active. Alien symbols flashed rapidly across it. Then the automatic translator started working. Jack's eyes widened. The terminal contained classified Zoroth records, thousands of files, military reports, ancient documents, secret intelligence data. Crocs looked surprised. Prisoners should never have access to that information. Jack sat in front of the terminal. If he wanted to stop the invasion of Earth, he needed answers. He quickly searched for information about humans. At first, the results looked ordinary. Population numbers, military strength, technological development. Then he found a restricted file, a very old file. The warning symbol beside it flashed red. Access level, Supreme Command only. Jack opened it. The screen filled with ancient records. Some of them were thousands of years old. The first sentence made everyone in the room silent. Warning, humanity must never be underestimated, Jack frowned. The document continued. Long ago, alien explorers had secretly observed Earth. They expected humans to destroy themselves through war. Instead, humans survived every disaster. World wars, plagues, famines, natural disasters. Again and again, humanity adapted. Again and again, humanity survived. The report described humans using strange words. Persistent, unpredictable, impossible to break. Crocs read over Jack's shoulder. His eyes grew wider with every line. This cannot be real, he whispered, but it was real. The file came directly from Zoroth archives. Jack opened another document, then another. Each one told a similar story. Ancient alien observers had been studying Earth for centuries. Many species considered humans weak because they lacked advanced technology. Yet every report reached the same conclusion. Humans were dangerous for one reason: they refused to quit. Even when defeat seemed certain, humans kept fighting. One ancient report contained a sentence that caught everyone's attention. If humanity ever reaches the stars, they may become one of the most influential species in the galaxy. Silence filled the room. Jack slowly leaned back, for the first time. He understood why the Zoroth were interested in Earth. They were afraid, not of human technology, not of human weapons. They were afraid of what humans could eventually become. Suddenly another alarm sounded. The ship shook violently. A nearby screen switched to an external camera feed. Everyone turned toward it. The unknown vessel had arrived. Gasps spread through the room. The ship looked unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Its surface was covered with silver armor. Bright energy flowed across its hull. The vessel was much smaller than the Zoroth prison ship. Yet it moved with incredible speed. A second later, powerful beams of light struck the prison ship. Explosions erupted across the hull. The attackers were tearing through Zoroth defenses. Crew members screamed over communication channels. Shield failure on multiple decks. Enemy weapons penetrating armor, security systems. The room became completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Every prisoner stared at the screen in disbelief. At the top of the classified file, one name glowed brightly: Jack Carter. Jack felt his heart pounding inside his chest. This had to be a mistake, again. First the aliens kidnapped him. Now a secret military file was claiming he was somehow important. None of it made sense. Crocs looked from the screen to Jack. Then back to the screen. You truly did not know about this? He asked. Jack shook his head. I have never seen this before anyone could read further. The ship suddenly shook from another explosion. The ceiling above them cracked. Sparks rained across the control center. The unknown attacking vessel was still tearing through the Zoroth defenses. Warning sirens echoed across every deck. Jack quickly focused on the file. If the Zorith commander wanted him so badly, the answer had to be inside. The document contained records gathered over many years, according to the report. Alien observers had secretly monitored certain humans across Earth. Scientists from several civilizations believed some individuals possessed extremely rare psychological traits. Traits that appeared again and again throughout human history. Leadership under pressure, unusual adaptability, fear resistance. The ability to continue fighting after others gave up. The report called these people ascension candidates. Jack frowned. The theory sounded ridiculous. But the Zorith clearly believed it. The next section contained his military records. Training scores, mission reports, psychological evaluations. Every detail of his life had been studied. Someone had been watching him for years. A cold feeling moved through his body. Crocs read another section. His eyes widened. The Zorith believe humans like you could unite entire worlds. Jack stared at him. That is impossible. Maybe it was. But the Empire had invaded planets because of less. Suddenly the control center doors burst open. Several frightened prisoners ran inside. "The guards are coming!" One shouted, "They know where we are." The room instantly came alive. Everyone began preparing for a fight. Jack closed the file. Right now survival mattered more than answers. He looked around quickly. The prisoners were scared. Some were strong, some were intelligent, but none of them were organized. That was the real problem. If they stayed divided, the Zorith would crush them. Jack climbed onto a damaged console. His voice echoed through the room. "Listen to me." The prisoners turned toward him. "We can fight each other, or we can work together and leave this ship alive." For several seconds nobody responded. Then Croc stepped forward. "I will follow the human." Others slowly nodded. One by one, prisoners from different worlds joined him. The group began growing, not because Jack was the strongest, not because he was the smartest, because he remained calm when everyone else was afraid. Moments later, Zorith soldiers entered the corridor. Energy weapons flashed. The battle began immediately. But this time things were different. The prisoners were no longer acting alone. They fought together. Crocs used his incredible strength to block the narrow hallway. Smaller prisoners attacked from behind cover. Jack directed their movements like a battlefield commander. Every order came quickly. Every decision had a purpose. Again and again, the Zorith attacks failed. For the first time, the Empire's soldiers were being pushed back by former prisoners. Meanwhile, far above the battle, Commander Vurak watched everything from his flagship command deck. His glowing eyes followed Jack's movements on multiple screens. Several officers stood nearby. None dared speak. Finally, one officer gathered enough courage. "Commander, should we destroy the prison ship?" Vurak immediately shook his head. "No." The officer looked confused. "The prisoners may escape." Vurak's expression darkened. "I do not care about the prisoners. I want the human." The bridge became silent again. Vurak remembered the classified reports. Ancient predictions, forbidden research. The galaxy believed humans were young and unimportant. But hidden archives told a different story. Humanity had potential unlike any species ever discovered. And Jack Carter represented that potential. If he escaped, everything could change. Back on the prison ship, the fighting continued. The prisoners finally reached a transport hangar. Huge spacecraft filled the chamber. Freedom was only a few hundred meters away. Excitement spread through the group. After everything they had endured, they might actually survive. Then a deep mechanical voice echoed throughout the hangar. Security lockdown activated. Massive metal doors slammed shut. Escape routes vanished instantly. Several prisoners groaned in frustration. Jack looked toward the opposite side of the hangar. A single figure stood there, Commander Vurak. The alien leader had arrived personally. His black armor reflected the emergency lights. Energy crackled around his weapon. Every prisoner froze. Even Krok stepped backward. Varrock slowly walked forward. His eyes remained locked on Jack. "I have crossed half the galaxy because of you," he said. Jack tightened his grip on a stolen weapon. "You wasted your time," the commander smiled slightly. "No, you simply do not understand your value yet." The giant hangar fell silent. Even the alarms seemed distant now. Varrock raised his weapon. Not toward the prisoners, toward Jack alone. Then something unexpected happened. A bright silver beam suddenly crashed through the ceiling. The entire hangar exploded with light. Metal twisted. Fire erupted everywhere. The unknown attackers had finally reached the prison ship. Shock waves threw soldiers and prisoners across the floor. Varrock stumbled backward. The ceiling collapsed behind him. And through the smoke appeared dozens of armored figures wearing silver combat suits. They were not Zoroth. They were not prisoners. And they had only one objective. Their leader pointed directly at Jack and shouted, "Secure the human." Jack's eyes widened. The attackers were not here to rescue everyone. They were here for him, just like the Zoroth. And now two powerful forces were willing to start a war over a single human soldier. Asterisk, asterisk. The hangar exploded into chaos. Smoke filled the air. Pieces of burning metal crashed onto the floor. Prisoners ran in every direction. Zoroth soldiers opened fire. The mysterious silver-armored warriors fired back immediately. Bright energy beams crossed the hangar like lightning. In the middle of it all stood Jack Carter, the one person everyone seemed to want. The leader of the Silver Soldiers pointed directly at him, "Secure the human." He shouted again. Several warriors rushed forward. But Commander Varrock reacted instantly. His weapon unleashed a powerful blast. The floor between Jack and the attackers exploded. A wall of fire separated both sides. "Nobody touches him." Varrock roared. The battle became even more violent. Jack ducked behind a damaged transport ship as explosions shook the hangar. Crocs landed beside him. The giant alien looked exhausted but ready to fight. "I am beginning to dislike being near you," Croc said. Despite the danger, Jack laughed. "You and me both." Another explosion shook the ship. Suddenly, a silver-armored soldier appeared near their position. His helmet hit his face. He raised both hands. "I am not your enemy," he said. Jack did not lower his weapon. "Then tell me who you are." The soldier glanced around carefully. "We are the Vanguard Alliance. The Zoroth have spent centuries hunting individuals like you." Jack frowned. "Individuals like me?" The soldier nodded. "There is no time to explain everything. We must leave now." Before Jack could ask another question, a loud warning echoed throughout the ship. "Critical damage detected, reactor failure imminent." Every screen flashed red. The prison ship was dying. Varrock immediately understood the danger. He opened a communication channel to every Zoroth soldier. "Retreat to evacuation vessels." The commander then looked directly toward Jack. For a moment, their eyes met across the battlefield. Varrock pointed at him. "This is not over." "Human." Then the commander disappeared into the smoke. Moments later, the Silver Soldiers began escorting prisoners toward escape ships. Jack, Crocs, and dozens of survivors boarded a transport vessel. As they launched away from the prison ship, everyone watched through the windows. The massive Zoroth vessel drifted silently through space. Then a brilliant explosion erupted from its center. A giant sphere of light expanded outward. Within seconds, one of the most feared prison ships in the galaxy was gone. Silence filled the transport. Everyone realized how close they had come to dying. Hours later, the survivors arrived aboard a much larger silver warship. Jack was immediately escorted to a secure command room. There he finally met the leader of the Vanguard Alliance. An elderly woman stood beside a holographic star map. Unlike most aliens Jack had encountered, she was human. Jack froze. For the first time since his capture, he was looking at another person from Earth. The woman smiled slightly. "My name is Admiral Sarah Hayes." Jack stared at her. "You are human?" "Yes," she replied. "And there are many more." The Admiral activated the star map. Hundreds of stars appeared. Many of them were marked with Vanguard symbols. Jack looked confused. Sarah noticed immediately. "Humanity is not as isolated as you think," she explained. "For decades, small groups of humans have secretly worked with other civilizations." Jack could barely believe what he was hearing. Everything he thought he knew was changing. Then the Admiral zoomed the map toward Earth. The room became silent. A massive cluster of red markers appeared around the planet. Zorath warships, hundreds of them, the invasion flee. The darkness of space exploded with light. Thousands of weapons fired at once. Blue beams, red plasma bolts, missiles, energy cannons. The largest battle in human history had begun. The Zorath invasion fleet moved toward Earth like a giant wall of steel. Behind them, the beautiful blue planet hung silently in space. Billions of people below had no idea how close destruction had come. On the bridge of the Vanguard flagship, Jack Carter watched the battle unfold. Fighters rushed past the windows. Warships exchanged devastating attacks. Explosions flashed across the battlefield. Admiral Sarah Hayes studied the tactical display. Her face was serious. "The Zorath still have superior numbers," she said. Jack nodded. The enemy fleet was enormous, even with the help of dozens of allied civilizations. Victory was far from guaranteed. Then a warning officer shouted, "Commander Varek's flagship is moving forward." The main screen zoomed in. A massive black warship emerged from the center of the Zorath formation. It was larger than anything else on the battlefield. Weapons covered its hull. Shield generators glowed like miniature suns. Croc stared at it and shook his head. "That ship destroyed my home world." The bridge became silent. Everyone understood what was at stake. Suddenly a transmission appeared. Commander Varek's face filled the screen. He looked completely calm. "As if the battle had already been won, human," he said. "I gave your species a chance. You should have stayed hidden." Jack stepped closer. "You should have stayed away from Earth, for the first time." Varek laughed, a cold, confident laugh. Then he made a gesture. Behind his flagship, a strange structure emerged. The bridge crew gasped. The object was enormous. A glowing ring surrounded by dark metal towers. Energy surged across its surface. Alarms immediately sounded throughout the Vanguard fleet. Sarah's eyes widened. "No," Jack looked at her. "What is it?" Her voice became tense. "A stellar annihilator." The room fell silent. Sarah quickly explained, "It is a super weapon. One shot can destroy an entire planet." Every person on the bridge stared at the screen. Earth was now facing extinction. Varek smiled. "The galaxy will remember today." The transmission ended. Seconds later, the giant weapon began charging. A sphere of energy formed inside the glowing ring. The light became brighter and brighter. Jack knew there was only one option. The weapon had to be destroyed. Immediately, he turned toward Sarah. "I need a ship." She already knew what he was thinking. "It is too dangerous." Jack smiled slightly. "That has never stopped humans before." A few minutes later, a small strike team launched from the flagship Jack Crocs, and several elite Vanguard soldiers raced directly toward the enemy superweapon. The battle around them was absolute chaos. Warships exploded. Fighters twisted through deadly crossfire. Energy blasts lit up the darkness, yet somehow they continued forward. Enemy ships tried to intercept them, but Allied vessels created openings, one by one. Civilizations from across the galaxy risked everything to help, because for the first time, they believed the Zorath could lose. Finally, the strike team reached the stellar annihilator. Their ship crashed into one of its outer platforms. The team jumped out and began fighting through waves of Zorath defenders. The battle was brutal. Every corridor became a battlefield. Every doorway had to be captured. Crocs smashed through armored soldiers like a living tank. Jack led the assault deeper into the structure, closer and closer to the weapon's power core. Meanwhile, Commander Varric watched everything from his flagship. His officers looked nervous. "The human is approaching the core," one warned. Varric narrowed his eyes, then he did something unexpected. He boarded a shuttle himself. If the human wanted the weapon, the commander would stop him personally. Minutes later, Jack finally reached the central chamber. A giant energy reactor filled the room. Power surged through massive conduits. The entire superweapon depended on this core. Destroy it, and Earth would survive. Before Jack could act, a familiar voice echoed behind him. "You have been a problem since the day we found you." Jack turned. Commander Varric stood at the entrance. Weapon ready, the final confrontation had begun. The two faced each other across the glowing chamber. Neither moved. Around them, the fate of Earth hung in the balance. Varric broke the silence. "Do you know why we feared humanity?" Jack remained quiet. Varric continued, "Because humans never accept limits. You survive when logic says you should fail. You inspire others to resist." His expression darkened. "That makes you dangerous." Jack slowly raised his weapon. "No, it makes us human." The battle began. Energy blasts crossed the chamber. Metal exploded. Machines shattered. For several intense minutes, neither gained an advantage. Then Varric made a mistake. He focused on Jack and ignored the damaged reactor behind him. Jack fired one final shot, not at the commander, at the reactor. The core overloaded instantly. Warning alarms screamed across the chamber. Varric's eyes widened in horror. "You fool!" Jack smiled. "Maybe, but Earth survives." The reactor erupted with energy. The strike team escaped moments before the stellar annihilator exploded. A massive shockwave tore through the Zorith fleet. Enemy ships lost power. Formation collapsed. Panic spread through their ranks, across the battlefield. Allied fleets launched a final assault. The Empire began to fall apart within hours. The remaining Zorith forces surrendered or retreated. The war was over. Earth was safe. Days later, celebrations spread across countless worlds for the first time in centuries. The Zorith Empire had been defeated on Earth. People finally learned the truth about the invasion and about the soldier who helped stop it. Jack Carter never considered himself a hero. He was simply a man who refused to quit. As for Commander Varric, his final words became famous across the galaxy, recorded by damaged battle logs and repeated for generations. A warning to anyone who underestimated humanity. "We kidnapped the wrong soldier," and from that day forward, every civilization remembered one lesson. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the most advanced. But when everything seemed lost, when hope disappeared, when defeat looked certain, humans kept fighting. And that was what made them unstoppable. ****